Welcome to Pinnacle's NFL Best Bets for Week 14. I'm Anthony Bruno, joined by Scott Cullen on behalf of Pinnacle. Pinnacle has been your trusted sportsbook for over 25 years, offering you the best odds and best payouts, especially on the Week 14 NFL slate. All right, so we're coming off a pretty solid Week 13. I hit Chargers minus 1.5. I had Bills minus 7, who crushed the 49ers in Buffalo in the snow game. But the week was highlighted by Scott, who hit Nick Westbrook-Akine anytime touchdown at plus 303, which was the best price in market. So, Scott, that was one of the most impressive plays of the year. So keep it up in week 14.
That was what we call a salvage, Anthony, because the rest of my picks were not great. But hitting plus 303 on Westbrook-Akine did make my week for sure. I was pretty happy to see that score.
But yeah, let's follow that up with some big plays here in week 14. Start us off with your first best bet on the slate.
All right, my first best bet, I'm taking the Seattle Seahawks on the money line at the Arizona Cardinals, plus 129, which I believe is best price in market. And essentially, this is the NFC West of mediocrity, that none of these teams are particularly strong in any one aspect. What does concern me is that the Cardinals are not great defensively. Their defensive EPA per play is something like 22nd. And I think that's where the difference lies in that Seattle, as mediocre as they are overall, their defense is like top 12. And I think that gives them a bit of an edge. They won 16-6 over the Cardinals in Seattle just a couple of weeks ago. And so I figure they're a lively underdog, and getting the plus money on the road is worth the play.
Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion on either side in this game, but this is a massive game in the NFC West. So you know what? I think I might just blindly tail you in this spot, Scott, and ride with Seahawks.
I'm not sure that history justifies blindly tailing, but go ahead.
Well, listen, I'm looking forward to your next play here because your last anytime TD bet was money. But for my first best bet on the slate, I am looking at the Kirk Cousins revenge game with the Falcons taking on the Vikings, but I don't think Kirk Cousins is going to get revenge on his former team. I like the Vikings at minus 5.5, minus 115. Cousins has been brutal his last 3 games. 0 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. What's interesting is that he has dominated the Bucs this year. So in 2 games against the Bucs, he has 8 touchdowns, 1 pick. Kirk Cousins against every other team this year, 9 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. So now he's going up against the Vikings defense that has been excellent this year. 2nd in EPA per play, 2nd in success rate, 1st in rush EPA. So if the Falcons are not able to get the ground game going with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, that's going to put even more pressure on Cousins and the passing game. And that's not a very good recipe considering that the Vikings put a ton of pressure on the quarterback. Cousins historically, not a great QB under pressure. I mean, listen, a lot of quarterbacks in the league aren't very good under pressure. So it's just a really tough spot for this Falcons offense. And then on the other side, I know the Falcons miraculously had 5 sacks last week against Justin Herbert, but all season they have been one of the worst pass rushes in the NFL. So I think Sam Darnold, Justin Jefferson, and Jordan Addison, they should have a pretty solid time. They should be comfortable in this game. I think Darnold should be, and that passing game should be pretty good against this Falcons team that has been brutal all season. Again, outside of last week when it comes to putting pressure on the quarterback. So give me the Vikings minus 5.5.
Yeah, and I certainly concur with that because my next pick for a best bet is a Justin Jefferson anytime touchdown. We've got him at plus 102. Again, I believe that's best price in market. And that's some of that is surprising is that Jefferson hasn't scored a touchdown since week 7. And he only had 5 touchdowns last year. And this is a player who, one of the top 2 or 3 wide receivers in the NFL, puts up huge numbers. He's 2nd in receiving yards behind Jamar Chase. But I think the key here to get Jefferson back in the end zone is the Falcons' defense is not good, and particularly against wide receivers. They've given up 15 touchdowns to wide receivers this year. There are only 5 teams that have done that. 3 of them have played an extra game. They played 13 games as opposed to 12. So, one of the worst defenses in terms of keeping wide receivers out of the end zone. And facing one of the best wide receivers in the game. So I think this is a good opportunity to get Jefferson back in the end zone, and this sort of dovetails on your pick of taking the Vikings minus the points, that they can do it with Justin Jefferson scoring along the way.
And you said it at the time of recording, this is the best price in market at plus 102. I've seen him at minus 105, in other spots, minus 110. So Justin Jefferson at Pinnacle, plus 102 to score a touchdown. It was the same thing last week with Nick Westbrook-Akine. Pinnacle by far had the best price in market. That hit. So if there's ever a spot where Jefferson's going to get back in the touchdown column, this is a pretty good spot against the Atlanta Falcons. All right, so moving on now. My next best bet is going to be the Bears, plus 3.5 at minus 103 on the road against the San Francisco 49ers. The Bears' offense has been a lot better the last 3 weeks since firing Shane Waldron as offensive coordinator. In that span, they've been 13th in EPA per play, 15th in success rate. And over those 3 games, they've gone up against 3 good defenses in Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay. And this 49ers team right now, they are in shambles. Injuries across the board. Christian McCaffrey, Jordan Mason on IR. Nick Bosa still banged up. Same with Trent Williams. It looks like they are trending towards not playing again this week. Fred Warner is playing through a broken bone in his ankle right now. Even Brock Purdy, okay, he's healthy. He's been practicing, but he recently had a shoulder injury. How healthy is he? This team is just not playing well right now. They're dealing with a lot of injuries. They have not looked good all season. And then you have this Bears team, like I said, the last 3 weeks under their new OC, they've been good. And now they're going to get another little bump because it's going to be their first game with interim head coach Thomas Brown after they fired Matt Eberflus. And listen, I know it's hard to quantify that stuff, like the bump the week after you fire your head coach. But, I think it means a little bit. And on top of that, the Bears are coming off 10 days of rest. So I think they're in a good spot. Again, I don't know if they win this game outright, but I do like them to cover the spread at plus 3.5.
Well, I mean, there are 2 things here. Is that the Bears, they had to get rid of Eberflus. The way the Thanksgiving game ended was just such a public disaster that they had to make a change. I mean, there have been rumblings before that, but to let that game end with timeout in their pocket and not get the tying field goal attempt was just nuts. But anyway, so yeah, maybe the new coach does give them help. But the 49ers, coming into this season, they were essentially co-favorites with the Chiefs, basically to get back to the Super Bowl, because everyone thought, well, it was such a close game last year. They still have the vast majority of their roster coming back. They should be in contention. And all we've seen this year is problem upon problem upon problem for the 49ers. And for a certain amount of time, you start to think, okay, well, they'll overcome it because they are so good and they have this many great players. But then all these players start landing on IR, and well, now they're not so easily going to overcome it. And so, this is what you see when they go into Buffalo last week, and Buffalo is a team that's playing really well, and they stomped them. And I can see why, you might like the Bears to take the 49ers this week, because the 49ers recently have just shown that they can't overcome all the problems that have been heaped upon them this year. And so I think, the Bears are a lively underdog in this spot.
And are the 49ers going to look as terrible as they looked the last 2 weeks against Buffalo and Green Bay? I don't think so, but all these injuries, I mean, they are just piling up. At some point, I mean, I think we've already seen the breaking point with this team. I don't think they're a legit contender at this point. They're probably going to miss the playoffs. Listen, I know they still have Kyle Shanahan, and that's always going to mean something, one of the best coaches in the league, but I think the Bears keep this one tight. All right, to close out the show, I'm going to sneak in one more best bet because I really want to talk about this player. He's just so damn good, okay? Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
We are witnessing not only one of the greatest rookie tight end seasons of all time, but he's on pace to have one of the best tight end seasons of all time statistically right now, maybe outside of touchdowns. But right now, he leads the NFL in catches, okay? Not just among tight ends, among all players. He's 4th in the NFL in yards, 4th in the NFL in targets. I like him to go over 67.5 receiving yards at minus 110 with the Raiders on the road against the Bucs. There's a couple interesting stats I want to talk about. So in the 2 games that Raiders QB Aiden O'Connell has started and finished, in games that he hasn't actually left due to injury or anything like that, Bowers has combined for 19 catches, 211 yards, and 1 touchdown on 24 targets. Okay, so whether it's Minshew in there or O'Connell, they clearly like throwing to this guy. But even more interesting, okay, going into their bye week, the Raiders fired offensive coordinator Luke Getsy, and they promoted Scott Turner as their OC. And since they did, over those 3 games, Brock Bowers has 40 targets. 40 targets the last 3 games. They are making even more of an effort to get this guy the ball under their new OC. And the Bucs, of course, one of the worst defenses in football, especially their pass defense. It's just a really good spot for Bowers here. Like, really, the balls are only going to Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers in this Raiders passing attack. So really like Bowers to go over 67.5 receiving yards. And if you like him to score a touchdown, Pinnacle has the best price in market at plus 190.
That's a nice price though right there. I know he hasn't scored a ton of touchdowns, but the Buccaneers defense is, I believe, 27th in EPA per play against. So this game is a game that I like to go over the total as well. It was 47, which is a reasonably high number, but both defenses are not good. And your point on Bowers here, the focus that he has become of this Raiders offense. I remember him in his early years at Georgia thinking, wow, like this is a guy who has a chance to be something great. And the fact that he's lived up to it so quickly, like that here in his first year, he is, putting up these wild numbers. You don't expect that those numbers are going to go down for the foreseeable future. So he is a huge impact player. And I think essentially it's taking the market some time to catch up in terms of total yards. And so there's an opportunity here, like you say, to grab the over and watch them throw to Brock Bowers 12 or 15 times on Sunday.
And listen, Scott and I are always going to look at the numbers on this show, but even if you watch Brock Bowers play, like, this dude's an absolute freak athletically. Like, he's fast, great hands, he's great after the catch, he's like super physical. He's honestly like incredible to watch. Like, just seeing what he was able to do in that last game against the Chiefs. I mean, the guy's just so good. So if we can get 8 to 10 targets in this game, I like him to go over that number. But that is going to do it for our Week 14 best bets. Listen, as I say every week, whether you're betting on main markets, player props, futures, you have to check out Pinnacle because you are going to get the best odds and the best payouts. We, of course, also have the highest limits across the industry. So you're making a massive mistake if you are not betting on the NFL at Pinnacle. But that's going to do it. I'm Anthony Bruno for Scott Cullen. Best of luck with your Week 14 NFL bets. We will be here for next week to recap Week 14 and go over our Week 15 NFL best bets. But until then, best of luck, enjoy the football, and remember to bet smart and bet Pinnacle.